All right, what's going on, guys? Graham Ramita here with FanSided Hidden Remote.com and ahead of Quinnipiac's Wake the Giant event this coming Sunday. Impractical Jokers, the rest of Season 9 coming back on June 16th, and his upcoming comedy tour coming up this summer as well, coming up in a couple of weeks. We got Sal Vulcano of the Impractical Jokers. Sal, you got a lot going on, dude. What's going on, man?
Hey, bud, how are you? I love to have the work again after being down for a couple of years, so I'm going as hard as I can right now.
Yeah, very exciting stuff. But like the first thing that I wanted to ask you about, like we just talked about right before we got going here, was the Quinnipiac event coming up in 2 days. That's my alma mater. I'm a Connecticut guy, so I might be checking out on Sunday. But it's a Wake the Giant event. I was trying to find out more information about this event. Do you know exactly what you're going to be doing on Sunday? I know you had joked ahead of time that you might be reading over some students' papers, but can you kind of give a sneak peek of what this event's going to be about?
Oh, it's straight up hour of stand-up comedy, man. Same thing I do when I tour, through the country and stuff. But I will say, Graham, I did not know the pronunciation. I was saying Quinnipiac, but you said you went there, right? So
I'm an alum, yes. Yeah. It's Quinnipiac. Yeah, I must have mispronounced it myself. I'm terrible with pronunciation. I was trying to get your last name right before we got going here, so you're probably right, honestly.
My last name is it's spelled Vulcano, but it's actually it's pronounced Quinnipiac.
That's fun. No, that's great, man. No, I think everyone's looking forward to that on Sunday. Do you kind of look at this as a warm up for your upcoming tour, which kicks off April 15th?
Yeah, well, that is my next tour date, but I've been touring since last year. So
oh, wow.
But it is nice because sometimes I'm away like every couple of weeks, and what I'll do is I'll throw in some like local gigs or college gigs in between just to kind of keep it up. It's a different muscle too, right? If I'm in a theater or a club or a college show, when you're performing for, mostly like 18 to 21-year-olds, it's definitely a different exercise. You know what I mean? So it's good to stay sharp and be in every single situation. So I'm psyched to get up there.
Yeah, no, it's funny you mentioned that. That was kind of my next question. So, like, what do you notice as far as, like, the difference in audience? When you go to an event like this and then you kind of do your regular tour, are there certain jokes you kind of save for certain audiences and there's certain responses to certain things you say, or is there really not much of a difference between the two demographics?
There's always pretty much a difference, and I try to say the jokes in every single scenario so I can see how they play and adjust them. But you still don't know, just like anything else. You just don't know if you're going to get a really excited, hot crowd that night, or a crowd that's more reserved. Or I did a college a few weeks back, and a lot of the kids, they told me it was their first comedy show ever, and here they are, like coming out of a pandemic and everything. They were way more reserved, which is kind of like the stereotype that colleges are getting these days, that it's a little bit like things are, you can't joke about everything nowadays. But then I was at a college last night and it was the exact opposite. They were really raucous, so you really can't tell who you're gonna get. I prefer the raucous, obviously.
Yeah, no, of course, and I'm sure the audience.
So if anyone from Quinnipiac is listening, when I come out and just do the wave, I'll stage dive. We'll get real rowdy in there.
No, I think everyone, like I said, everyone's really excited for it, and it's cool too. Like you think of the audience that's going to be an event like this. I mean, stemming from whatever age, 18 to 21, 22 for that prime college years, I guess. Is it weird? Like, do you do meet and greets at these events or no? Do you get a chance to like talk to the kids one on one or not really? Just kind of do your thing and take off.
I usually meet with the student body afterwards, and just say hello to those guys, chat them up a little bit, take some photos and stuff. And they're always just great kids, man. They're always very excited that I took the time to come by. But I say the opposite. I'm so excited to actually be invited. So yeah, it's a mutual appreciation.
It's cool. So, like, when you do an event like this and you kind of meet with some of the people afterward, is it weird, like, when they kind of tell you, because for these kids, I mean, such as myself, I'm only 25, so, like, I'm in that demographic as well, where I kind of grew up watching you guys as well, and you guys aren't old by any means. So is it weird when you hear, like, these people say, I watched you growing up on TV because your show's been on the air for so long now?
Yeah, we've been on for 10 years. It is crazy to hear something like that. It's crazy to be on television that long, and then it is crazy to think that these kids that are like 17, 18 years old, if they started watching with their families at 8, And it's just wild, especially because like our show gives a little bit to everyone. We have a pretty broad demographic, and so like I always, there's jokes that go over the kids' heads and there's silly stuff, but you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, I wonder if as they watch it over the years and they see the same stuff and like, oh wow, I didn't get that when I was 8, but I get that joke at 18,
Yeah, no, exactly. No, I'm sure it's different for everyone. And I mean, especially with you guys too. I mean, especially in the midst of this pandemic, which we're obviously still in to a degree, but 2 years ago when this first thing, initially hit, you guys specifically with your show and your comedy tour and everything else with you personally, missing that audience interaction, that aspect of the audience and all of what you guys do. And you guys, powered on, you guys still did stuff during the pandemic and you still put out great content. But you guys specifically, I mean, again, everyone missed that audience aspect. If you're a performer or a singer or whatever it might be, you guys specifically with your show are always working with people. So going from interacting with people on the daily to then not having that at all during the pandemic for a good year or two, and now having that back, what's that journey been like for you?
It was a wild journey. When it all first hit, everybody was trying to make heads or tails out of everything, their jobs and what they were doing. And it was like a slow process of realization in the beginning, like, oh, wow, okay, so touring is done. Okay, so touring is done for quite some time. And then we're like, okay, filming is done. And then we're like, oh, wait a minute, like, when will we get back? Because people that film in studios and game shows or scripted stuff, they were able to get back a little bit sooner because they're in controlled environments. We're like, wow. Most of our show is dealing with people, unsuspecting people, the public. So that is not going to fly at all. So we had to solve for that. And basically, I think all but 2 episodes of the 26 or 27 we filmed in season 9 were during the pandemic.
Wow.
And it was cool because it forced us to reevaluate the show and challenge us to, make something still funny, still creative, and still felt fresh in the wake of that. And I think that sometimes that's a really good thing, right? Necessity is born out of that. So we pushed ourselves and found new things, and by that it really rejuvenated us too, because we had to just think out of the box and think in different ways, and it's something kind of satisfying to figuring something like that out, as you talked about, like the journey of it. So we just found ways to dig in again, and once we had the protocols in place of what we could do as far as just being safe, then it was a free-for-all as far as getting the creative together and getting back those moments again. But we did in the interim, we did have a show called Dinner Party that we created. Yeah, that they the network's really cool there. They're like, look, we need new content. No, if you remember, it was such a wild time in history where people were every single person, television was from home. Everything was from home. No new movies, no new TV shows. Every interview is from home. And so we're like, well, how do we do this in a fresh way? And we came up with the idea of, having dinner together and having guests on. And we ended up doing 18 episodes of that. It would have never existed, if we didn't have to challenge ourselves. So that was a lot of fun, too.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, like I said, you guys did great content during the pandemic, even finding new challenges, and no pun intended with the challenges on your guys' show, but it seems like as a fan, from my perspective, you guys always do some of your best work when you're challenged to do new things and kind of come up with new stuff and be creative, and we've seen that in the last couple of years specifically. And you've talked about before, I'm sure you guys get it a million times, how do you not get noticed more in public when you do your skits and do the challenges and stuff like that? And you guys have said before, not everyone knows you, which is funny, but even now, do you look at that? Obviously, it's a challenge to come up with new ways to not get noticed or not be recognized in public. But that's got to be a compliment, right? For it to be harder to film this stuff and not, to be noticed, and which means more people and more eyes are on your stuff. So you got to see that as a compliment, right?
Oh yeah, it's gotten, I guess, exponentially harder each and every year, but in success, right? So it's been, we have our practices in place to try and limit it, but it has gotten tougher and tougher. And this year has been no different. It's probably been the toughest that we've had.
Wow.
But it can be tricky if we don't realize that someone knows and we find out after the fact, because we'll never use those people. But for the most part, we film in densely populated areas. We overbook people that are coming into these, focus groups and things like that, and we weed them out. So it's harder to make the show, but we're still able to.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's just a fun challenge for you guys to work with, and it obviously comes out great every single time. And kind of comparing that to the comedy tour, the stand-up comedy tour that you were just talking about, how much of a difference is there for you, Sal? I mean, going from your own and then doing the show and kind of going back and forth, was there ever like a transition process for you where you kind of had to find your footing on your own, or is it like an immediate thing and doing your own stand-up comedy?
Sure. Well, we've been doing side projects in comedy for over 20 years.
Yeah.
And, with the show, it really took the lion's share of our time for a while. And there was always projects that we all wanted to do solo. And I always had done comedy on the side. So it was just a matter of saying, like, you know what? I'm not actually going to get any real time off. So if I really want to do this, I just have to be filling in the gaps and doing it in my downtime. So it was just a matter of, now I'm finally touring. I have a couple of hours of material, but for the last 6 or 7 years, just a matter of filming. And then, when we're done filming, I would go, into New York City and just perform every single night to kind of build that hour up. But it's something I've always done and always wanted to do. So it didn't take, much outside of just the determination and commitment to do it on any moment I had free, which I guess is kind of tough, but
yeah, no, yeah, like
love doing it. So
yeah, no, for sure, and you're juggling all of it, and just proving the single stand-up comedy route. You guys have done a really good job of that individually so far. And obviously, there's the difference between the show itself and you doing your stand-up singles comedy, and all of it. It's entertaining in various ways. But with the show itself coming back, like I said, season 9 resuming in June. Obviously, with Joe stepping away, you guys have celebrity guest hosts coming up this summer. You got Eric Andre in the show. That episode just aired, I think, last weekend, right? Method Man coming up, Jillian Bell, Colin Jost, among other people. Talk about that concept of it. You guys have been on the show or on the air, like you said, for a decade now, still coming up with new ways to innovate and be creative, this being one of them. You guys are no strangers to having celebrities on the show, but talk about that new aspect of it and how fun it was for you guys to interact with these new people during the punishment stage of the episodes coming up with the celebrities.
Yeah, it was an absolute blast, actually. I mean, we are no strangers over the in the past to having on guests here and there when it was organic and when it fit. But obviously, we didn't think that we could fill Joe's shoes, right? So we didn't want to put someone in that position, not right out of the gate, because those are tough shoes to fill. Yeah. And so we tried to solve for X, right? And at first we were like, should we have on, a guest through the whole episode? But between all the scheduling and everything, and then, how we compete, and we didn't want to, since the guests couldn't be there to be to play, then they couldn't be punished. So we ended up landing on having them be integral parts in the punishments and using them as a cornerstone to build out the creative of the punishments. And our non-guests this season, for the most part, I think 7 or 8 of them we already had relationships with, and the other couple we were very big fans of. And the way we approached the guest list was not just to book anyone or book who's hot, like the hottest person right now. This is that. It was kind of like, who would we be really interested in working with? Who do we think would just excel? And out of the people that we knew that we had really good rapport with, who would have fun and just show and be excited to be there. And so that's how we netted out with the guest list we have. And I am actually so happy and proud of the guest list that we have. It was only a few months back where we didn't have anyone booked, and we were just kind of, developing this concept. So we didn't really know where we would land because, it's based on people's availability and interest and all that stuff. And we just kind of, reached out to these folks, and they were all super enthused and happy to be there and happy to contribute and come play in our sandbox. And they all really, really just infected the show with an energy that we hadn't had prior, because it's just a new situation. And to have a new situation like that after so many seasons, it was rejuvenating for us and our crew and staff, who were also down for those long moments. So it just added to our own energy and excitement of coming back. And then there was this new element, and they brought in their energy. And I'm really, really happy with the punishments and how they went. We got grand with them. We really started to make them into bigger set pieces. We have one that's a full-on murder mystery this season. We have one that's a full-on dating game show that was, supposedly, ostensibly a dating game show hosted by Brooke Shields. Yeah. Rob Riggle played the detective in a murder mystery. We had David Cross teaching an acting class. Jillian Bell played my wife on a panel about marriage and couples. So we really, really kind of built out the punishments to a place that they hadn't been prior.
Yeah, someone I was really excited to see on that guest list was Chris Jericho. Now, I know you've had Tommy Dreamer on the show before, Bully Ray, Velvet Sky have all appeared in previous episodes. Jericho, I know you guys have been on his podcast before. You're obviously, along with Brian, big wrestling fans. Did you catch Stone Cold's return at WrestleMania last weekend? Because I know you were in the front row when Raw came to MSG a couple of years ago, and he acknowledged you and he pointed you out, which was cool. Did you catch his in-ring return last weekend?
I did. Man, you're good, dude. You are good. Yeah, I love Stone Cold. I got to go on his television show back right before everything closed out. And, if you're a wrestling fan, it doesn't get bigger than that. He was the nicest guy. He didn't disappoint. I was a little nervous to meet him because you have those preconceived notions in your head. You want to think that, oh, my God, after this we're going to become friends. But we did. Yeah, I caught that. That was this WrestleMania was, I think, my favorite WrestleMania in years and years and years.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was so entertaining and fun. And yeah, he was a big part of that. And then Jericho, of course, he's one of our all-time favorites, and he's just the best. And you know wrestling, so you know everything that he contributes to that world.
Yeah.
And he's just also a really fun, talented guy, and he was down for anything. And yeah, we've had a relationship with him, and we kind of hit him up, and now we share a network together. We're both under the umbrella of one media, and so there was good synergy there. We're actually, hopefully, we're in talks with AEW right now to see how we can work with them, possibly, fingers crossed, on a storyline or something of that nature. But Chris came in, and we laughed so hard all day long. He's just great. His episode was great.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. And it was funny, too, that you mentioned that, because I talked to Brian to promote the dinner show he just talked about a little while ago, 2 years ago, when I spoke to Brian about that. And he said the exact same thing that you did about, wanting to do a storyline. At that point, it was WWE. That was before AEW really got going on TNT and TBS. Have you heard from WWE at all? Because they're kind of weird, when you work with the other company, they kind of, cut you off a little bit. Has that happened with you guys at all, or has there not really been any communication there?
I've heard that, although I haven't really been witness to it, and I really hope not. We have a really long-standing relationship with WWE.
Yeah.
The people that work there are really terrific. They've always taken care of us. We're huge fans. We push them all the time. We tried to do something with them in the Ways of Storyline for a few years, and for one reason or another, it almost came to fruition, but kept falling through. But half of that roster are friends of ours now, which is wild to say as a wrestling fan growing up, to think that you'd be on that side of it and those, people will be your friends. So rooting for everybody. I'm a wrestling fan, so I'm just rooting for everyone. And we also have friends in the AEW roster. So I'm hoping that, that's not the case and it's just all love with everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, no, for sure. And as we wind down here, man, kind of going off that, two-part question for you. Favorite wrestling shirt that you can remember wearing on one of the episodes of the show? Because it feels like every so often we see you wearing a shirt, obviously Brian as well, and it's always a great shirt, and I'm always pointing it out. My girlfriend's family are big friends of the show, and they're always oh, he's wearing a Brody Lee shirt or an AEW shirt, something like that. So favorite shirt that you've worn on the show, and not relevant to that, but what else can we look forward to from you, from the comedy tour and the show going forward in 2022, man?
Yeah, well, I have dozens and dozens of shirts. Actually, Steve Austin made us one that said Jokers 316, which I thought was really cool. I don't know if I've worn it on the show yet, though. You got to love, wearing the Roddy Piper Hot Rod shirt. But I got it. You actually mentioned the one that came to mind. I love Orange Cassidy, but you mentioned my boy Brody Lee. And for me, wearing that shirt and just representing him is the one I like doing the most, obviously, because he was a tremendous athlete, wrestler, friend, and person. So anytime I can just shout him out, I try to.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and what'd you say? Your two-parter was what to expect?
Yeah, what to expect from the show and your tour coming up, man.
Yeah, so I'm going to continue doing solo dates all the way through till January of 23.
Wow.
So I'm assuming I'm going to be naming about another 20 to 30 cities on my solo tour. In the interim, the guys and I will be writing our fifth tour, and that's supposed to start in February 23, right after I sign off. So it's going to roll right into that. And then we just finished shooting season 9 3 days ago. Which was the longest season we've ever shot. It started in 2019. So that was a big sigh of relief. So right now We got about 4 more episodes of After Party to film with Joey Fatone this week, and then we'll have, quote unquote, about a month or so of downtime before we get into pre-production for season 10, which will start probably filming somewhere in June. And we're doing 18 episodes of that. So there's no shortage of us right now, and we're just really psyched. I'm psyched to have all the work and be back doing what we love.
Awesome, man. Love to see it. Looking forward to the new episodes dropping June 16th on True TV. The rest of the season on premiering then. You're going to be in Louisville. That's your next tour date on April 15th. More tour dates at salvulcanocomedy.com. Before then, you're going to be at Quinnipiac University, or Sal Quinnipiac, as you called yourself earlier, this coming Sunday, April 10th, 8 p.m. on York Hill campus. Sal, this has been a pleasure, man. Thanks so much for the time. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it, Graham. Thanks so much, buddy.